the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
Slightly grey, but very mild still, middle of October. And the autumn colours, Chris, are something stunning here on High Ash Farm.
Matthew, hello and welcome to High Ash as usual. Rats run off ahead of us, my terrible terrier. He's always so pleased to see you because it means half an hour or an hour roaming around a farm, which is one of his favourite things as well as one of my favourite things. And we're in one of my favourite seasons as well, in autumn, and the sun's gone in, but all over the farm at the moment we've got the autumn colours, and it's particularly spectacular this year, all the variation of the colours, because we've had lots of warm sunshine over the summer months, and that has meant that the colours which emerge on the leaves now are more prevalent than normal, because there's two chemicals in leaves, apart from the one that causes the green colour of the leaves, which is called chlorophyll. There's two other chemicals which protect the chlorophyll against very bright sunlight, because chlorophyll can break down very easily in intense sun. So these chemicals are hidden up until this time of the year, because the trees now start to have problem getting water out of the soil in autumn, which we're well into now, middle of October as you said. So what happens is the trees start to husband their resources and cut their leaves off with a special little layer where the leaf stem joins the twig or the branch, and it's a layer of corky-like substance, and that will be eventually where the leaf leaves the tree, and it's called the abscission layer. It's as though somebody's kind of put a knife through, an invisible knife. And so the poor leaves now start to develop these extraordinary colours. Flavonoids and carotenoids are the two colours. So the carotenoids is the red and orange colour, and the flavonoids the kind of yellowy colours as well, and they can sort of intermingle between each other as well, so you have the whole variety. So if we walk up to this is one of our more spectacular colourful trees.
We've got all the reds and oranges here, haven't we?
All mixed up together. So there we are. We're right underneath what's a Norway maple, and already some of the leaves are starting to shed, and now you can see what's happened. We've just picked one up off the floor, a typical maple leaf, like that symbol that you have, the Canadian symbol on their flag, in fact, are the maple species. They have red maple and silver maple, and because of the intensity of the sunlight in Canada, we can't really match those colours, but you can plant those two particular trees in the UK and you have a fairly good show. But this one above us is just beginning to change, just on the tips of the branches. All the leaves are about the colour of my face almost, sort of scarlet red. Sorry about that.
Well, at least you're not the green colour.
No. So the wind we had over the recent days has just shed the very first leaves off the tree, and you can see this long stem, and this one's actually been torn off where it's actually joined the twig. But for all the rest of the leaves, this little abscission layer will be forming while we're speaking. So the green will gradually disappear because obviously the tree can't support chlorophyll production anymore. So it starts to change completely, and you have these glorious colours. And all our native trees, whether it's birch, beech, oak, all the whole variety of them, all shed their leaves at different times, and some of them develop colours. Elm is lovely because you get bright yellow leaves on it, and it's got this rather endearing habit, if you can call it that, when the leaves go this lovely golden yellow just for a day, and then virtually 24 hours later all the leaves are off the tree. So some, like oak trees, hang on to the leaves for like ever and a day, well into November, and the beech trees are fairly similar to elm in that aside there's this Canty Hill plantation, about 12 acres of woodland, lots of beech trees in there, and you can see some of them have already started to turn a lovely golden yellow colour as you look down the edge of the wood there. There's one particular one there leaning over the side of the wood, and they, if I drive down the side of the wood, sort of in about another week's time, it'll be raining with beech leaves. They shed the leaves again, rather like our elm, very, very quickly indeed. So it's a really lovely time of year, and yet the oaks, they're dotted all over the farm, have hardly changed colour at all, so they'll hang on. Oak is one of the last ones to come into leaf, together with ash. Ash doesn't do too much, the leaves tend to turn brown and crinkly. And then you've got the introduced species, things like sycamore would be one, and there's an avenue behind us over here, Lombardy poplars. They are, again, not native, and of course the horse chestnut. And horse chestnut in particular, with the sycamore, come into leaf very early, but they also lose their leaves really early. So autumn doesn't happen sort of all in one batch. It spreads itself. It kind of gently walks you into winter, I suppose, is one way of looking at it.
It can be speeded along, though, with a bout of bad weather, can't it?
That's it, and that's typical of this time of the year. Once you're into October, which we are, particularly towards the end of October, we've had the autumn equinox on the 23rd of September, so night is beginning to steal a march on daylight hours, if you like. Night time's more than daylight hours at the moment, and so that also has an effect on the amount of sunlight that falls on the trees, and therefore has quite a big effect on when the leaves actually drop off. But each tree, each species of tree has its own means of dealing with autumn as it comes along, and it's a kind of a sign that you're heading into winter. And at the same time, many of the trees drop their seeds, or if the leaves come off in hedgerow trees, things like hawthorn, it exposes the berries even more than normal. So you have the bright, it's kind of, the bushes are saying, right, come on, here's this year's feast, if you like, to the birds, the squirrels, the small mammals. Come and eat it, but you know, we'll drop the leaves off so it's easy pickings, and that's exactly what the plant wants. It's almost as though they're ruling the roost in a funny way, if you could say that about trees, but that's their means of getting themselves about, that birds are invited to come and eat the seeds, fly away. The seeds come through their droppings, and that's one way the plants get themselves moved about. And of course the other plants that do that at this time of year, there's still some in flower right in front of us, and it's autumn hawkbit, and that will send its seeds off through the air like dandelion seeds. There's one there, almost the seed head is just down there in front of us. You get another good wind and it will blow the seeds away across the fields, sort of willy-nilly direction.
Just lets go all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, yeah. All of a sudden, like those elm trees that I mentioned, and that was certainly a symbol here through my childhood in the 1960s and early 1970s, before Dutch elm came in. The whole farm was covered in elm trees. One field is even called Elm Bank on the far side of where we're standing, and there was some fabulous English elms on there, 8, 9, 10 feet through the trunk. Amazing.
You've never quite recovered from their loss, have you?
I haven't.
50 years later.
Yes, I know. It's a sort of... The farm is kind of like my mouth, and you sort of feel round it, and it's very familiar, and all of a sudden there's a gap where a tooth has gone, and it's that kind of missing particular tree species. And I think we took down 1,500 trees over a 5 to 6 year period. Some of them were so big we actually used dynamite to take stumps out, so I won't forget that. 1982, somebody came here and we blew the stumps out, and the bits of wood went up sky high and you were then able to plough where the trees had stood, but they were never taken out purposely at all, only after they were dead and the boughs were dropping off, so you're kind of compelled to do it. But I have planted a new species of elm on the far side of what we call chestnut wood there, right on the edge of where that field is called Elm Bank, and it's one of the new species of elm that's resistant to Dutch elm disease, and it's thriving. It was my 65th birthday present from my 3 children. They bought me a tree, and
They would have thought you'd had enough already.
no, exactly, I suppose you could say that, but it's thriving. It's now been in 10 years, and it's a good 4 or 5 inches through the trunk. Nothing to match, but it's completely unaffected by Dutch elm disease. Yet on the other side of the farm, I've a beautiful English elm. It's about 6 foot round the trunk, so you can't quite get your arms around it if you're into tree hugging. And sadly, for some reason this year, it suddenly succumbed to Dutch elm disease.
Oh, the one on Bodica Way?
Yes, it lost all its leaves about 8 weeks ago, nothing to do with the drought, and it's died. So this new elm that I've planted, hopefully, if it's successful, we'll plant some others. Like, it's a little bit expensive, new variety called New Horizon, to give you a kind of new look in the countryside, if you like, but it's pretty much an English elm, and it's absolutely thriving. So there's always hope out in the countryside when these new diseases come along, and the same for ash. But at the moment, all our tree species in some form or other are suffering a little bit. The droughts, the high winds that we seem to be getting, they're all affecting particularly the older generation of trees. There we are.
They're certainly giving a good display this autumn.
Yes.
We've got some reds. As soon as the sun comes out, they'll be glowing as well.
Yes, this is fabulous in the low autumn sunshine when you get this colour on this particular leaf. I mean, it was green about 10 days ago, and now it's all these lovely colours caused by those 2 hidden chemicals, carotenoids and flavonoids. There we are, a little bit of history of autumn there.
I feel like this week's podcast should be retitled Chris Skinner's Autumn Almanac.
Oh dear, yes.
Swallows flying into one of the large barns at High Ash Farm, feeding their young. This is one of the big conservation success stories I know you're very proud of.
Just brings a huge delight. 4 youngsters just waiting for mum and dad.
The podcast aims to bring you sights and sounds like this every week, and we're very thankful of your support. So any donations or subscriptions are very welcome indeed.
All we need is a little bit of extra help. It just keeps it going from week to week.
Monthly or one-off subscriptions, whatever the size, and the website highashfarm.com/podcast.
6 youngsters right above our head, all with their gates wide open. Come on, rat. In the truck, next stop.
We're now in the woods, Fox's Grove, on High Ash Farm, having a wander through here. And lots of acorns on the ground and sweet chestnuts over there as well. It's all come down, I suppose, because of those strong winds.
Yes, we've had some pretty windy events here at the farm this year. It's a little bit unusual because the trees are still in leaf. It brings back memories of 1987 when we had really severe winds, brought down 1,500 trees here overnight, that one particular night. And the trees were in full leaf at that time. And this year it's happened again, but nowhere near as extreme. And in the eastern counties of the UK here, we missed the worst of the wind on this last one. It's the first named storm of the year.
Her name was Amy.
Yes, I know. So it's when we get to D, E and F, I start to get worried.
But we don't want Freddie or...
Yes, hopefully a lot of the canopy for the deciduous trees, the leaves will have come off, and the wind passes through deciduous trees much easier at that point. Conifers aren't affected in the same way because the needle structure is very fine and it tends to let the wind through. So when we have wind events, particularly during autumn and again in the spring you can get them again then. The weather's changeable. The conifers seem unaffected, and there's a massive Corsican pine in front of us. He's up about 120 feet, well over 30 metres, that one, and it's not lost a twig over the decades that I've known it.
That is ramrod straight.
It
that,
is.
isn't it?
It's incredible. I think it's just on 65 feet to the first branch to come out of it. But the timbers, because it's Corsican pine, it's called red deal, it's very little value by the time all the work goes in to fell it and load it on a lorry and it goes through to a sawmill. The value of softwood, which is what it is very, very low indeed. So I don't fell any trees here unless they fall over themselves, and the rest remain, and lots of ash trees all around us, all suffering in some degree or other with the ash dieback. You can see some of them are just bare twigs up there. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our trees are under stress in some form or other, either by the weather or the lack of rain or too much rain. And so there's this lovely circle in the woodlands which is invisible to us most of the time. So this time of the year the fungi become active, and some fungi don't produce fruiting bodies at all. Many of them are just active under the ground and carry on their lives in the form of sort of hyphal threads, almost microscopic. And if you do dig the soil in woodland, you can see these little white threads, and that's the fungal roots, if you like. And many of those species don't produce a fruiting body, and because the fruiting body is really the only bit that most people see.
So it's like a mushroom.
Exactly.
It's a fruiting
above,
body.
That's it, the bit above the ground. And we just walked up one of the tracks, and
Oh my word, I didn't notice these. Look at these, they're huge.
they're amazing. It's got a really lovely common name. It's called lawyer's wig, and because of the shape of the wig itself and the little scales from the freshly emerged ones. These are a little bit past their best, but it's also called an ink cap, and this particular one is called Shaggy ink cap, because the little scales hang off exactly like a lawyer's wig. I'm just going down on my one knee now to have a little look, and you can see the remains of the scales, particularly around this side, and they are good for about a day or two only, and then they start to do something unusual. They start to eat themselves. It's a process called auto-ingestion, and what happens is the tips of the dome of the fungus that hangs down over the long stalk, in technical terms that stalk's called a stipe, and they hang down exactly like a bell, with sort of something holding the bell up in the air, if you like, which is the stalk. And the tip of the bell starts to sort of drip a black ink, and that's why it's called ink cap.
And it's happening right here, just on the other side of this one, Chris. It's
Yes.
a huge, great long drip.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. You can actually collect it.
It's actually growing as you see it.
And use it. Oh, it is. Look, it's going down to the ground as we're watching. That's amazing. And it's surprising. Fungi often emerge almost overnight. Everything happens very, very quickly, which surprises everybody. It's nearly reached the ground. It's come down 3 inches, a long strand of black ink. You can collect it and use it for writing, hence the word ink cap in the name. And so what then happens with the original part of the cap, which this is the best one here, we'll describe this one. It's like a bell shape on a long pole, the bell's facing downwards. The margin starts to curl inwards, and that's where you start to have the black fungal spores developing. And what it's doing is, as it eats itself, so to speak, so I've just touched it with my finger and I've got jet black on the edge of my finger.
Looks like you've dipped your finger in Bovril.
Yes. So the fungal spores actually in this case drop onto the ground. If flies land here, they get that black juice on their feet and fly off and infect another portion of the woodland, anywhere where there's a suitable habitat for it. So that's its life cycle, but it has spent all year the fungal threads underground, and this is the only time of the year it gets itself up and about and able to reproduce by the means of spores. And the spores sometimes carried off in the wind, sometimes they get eaten by animals. There's lots of woodland animals here that will actually eat the ink caps when they're in their sort of prime state. When they are, it's an edible species, but I say to everybody, don't eat fungi unless you absolutely know what you're doing, and certainly nothing from woodland, although this is an edible species. It's got a close cousin called the common ink cap, which is also meant to be edible, but if you eat it and you drink alcohol at the same time, it is really toxic and cause violent sort of abdominal pains and upsets to the point that it can put you into hospital. And yet it's a close cousin of the shaggy ink cap, which is what we're looking at. So that's why you have to be careful. They're both similar in structure, except the common ink cap doesn't have the lawyer's wig look about it. So there we are, one of those things. But this time of the year...
That one is dripping there now.
Yes.
That one,
Yeah.
there's a...
Oh,
sorry, it
another
came
one
to
just
ground.
starting. Look. Wow.
It's all happening in front of us.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that's the process of this one now just
auto-ingestion, Matthew.
eating itself.
Yeah, exactly. It dissolves itself and then moves on, and that's the end. So the whole area underneath this fungi looks as though there's been a tiny bonfire here. The soil is jet black.
It's as black as tar.
Yes, exactly. And you know, if we'd have come here 24 hours ago, there'd have been neat little caps just up above ground level, looking very neat and pristine, and looking exactly like a lawyer's wig, which is where the common name comes from, shaggy ink cap. So there we are. I've not seen that before, actually dripping. The drip that we're looking at, don't look at me like that, is just about touching the ground now. It's only
This
half-
bit here is about to fall, I think.
Yeah.
That it did.
Yeah, so amazing.
So there's the lawyer's wig.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So if we just stand up, we've hardly any distance to walk.
Oh, and there's more, is there?
There's all sorts of different species, because it's that time of the year. When you visit the farm each week, some weeks I kind of scratch my head as to what we're going to visit, and I never quite know. And at this time of the year, you honestly don't know which way to turn. Everything's happening so quickly with the change of the season from summer to autumn, and then you think it's a very gentle change, but things happen, as we just saw with the dripping of the ink cap, things happen incredibly quickly. So we're just coming into the lower part of the wood. The soil is damper. It's quite now moving from sort of calcareous soil with lots of lime in it on the side of the hill behind us.
What was that word?
Calcareous. It just means rich in lime, in calcium, in other words.
Oh, that's
Yes,
that's
so
another good word.
It's quite a common usage word, and so we're now into alluvial soil, which has been washed down hills over the centuries. And funny enough, the soil's quite acidic now. We've changed the pH under our feet without knowing it. But if you tested the soil, this would be about 5.5, and where we just were 50 yards behind us would be about 7.5. So really interesting. So I've just brought us through, we're walking through birch trees now. Some of them have died and they're still standing. That's an ash, completely defoliated with ash dieback, so that will probably stand there 4 or 5 years more at the most, probably not that long. Because the soil is damp here, the root structure will die very, very quickly, and they will just topple over. So that's quite sad. And the same has happened to some of the silver birch trees.
Oh,
in
that's
front.
sad, because that's quite a feature of this part of the wood, isn't it?
Yes, we're getting more dead trees.
Oh, look at the bracket fungus
Yes,
on that. Is
that's
that
right.
what we're looking at?
Yes, that's it.
Oh,
That's
ho, ho.
birch polypore, it's called. And exactly what it is, it's a bracket fungus. So it's kind of hung on the side of the birch tree, like a dinner plate size almost.
It's there at right angles to the trunk.
Yes, little bit pale on the top, beigey on the top, and a wavy edge, and then underneath on the younger specimens it's bright white as well. It's not edible, it's it's just hard and leathery, like it's too high for us to reach on those particular ones. But this tree on the right is sprouting young birch polypore all the way up the trunk. You can see some just emerging.
Yeah, like the size of a seashell, whereas the
Yes.
bigger ones are more like a
They're
flying saucer.
Dinner plate size. Well, dinner plate for me size anyway. So they are pretty big, sort of 12 inches. That's 30 centimetres width across, and that's a particular fungi. You can see how specialist they are. You will only really find that species growing on birch trees. So that's what it's doing. You'll find it on living birch. It's a very, very common bracket fungi. It's called a bracket because it just comes out of the trunk at right angles like that and just fixes itself into the substrate of the tree. But it's a sign that the mycelium is right through the trunk, and that again is just the portion of the fungus that you see when it actually fruits at this time of the year. So there we are. Well, we've got a short walk now. We're still very close to where we are, but because there's a nettle patch and you've got quite thin summer trousers on, we'd have to walk through the nettles. So we'll just dive around the edge a little bit and then walk alongside the stream and see if we can see one of our most spectacular species.
Having a good trek through the woods, and Chris, we're quite close to the road here, aren't we? But very colourful entrant into our fungal forage.
Yes, it's that most spectacular of all the fungi in the British Isle, the fly agaric. It was called fly because it used to be gathered and ground up and made into a paste to kill flies in kind of medieval kitchens. It's also a hallucinogenic one. It really doesn't need much description. It's scarlet red.
It's a toadstool, really, isn't it?
Yes, this is a cracking species. Something's already taken a chunk out of it. About 4 inches across the cap, which is about as big as it gets to, and it's covered in sort of a creamy white spots all over. When it first emerged, when you actually see them coming out, they go, oh, there is one just coming out.
It's coming out.
Right,
Yes.
oh, we're right beside it. Oh, I hadn't seen that. Perfect. Just coming out, and the veil is still more or less intact on this one. It comes out completely white over the top of it, and we can just see the scarlet. So as the cap begins to open up now, it will break up into all these little white spots which you see on this one, which I've just decided to knock over onto one side. There it is. So that's freshly emerged, and by this time tomorrow the cap will have opened up 24 hours time and be 3 to 4, 5 inches across the top. And also, because it's an Amenantia species, it has a little veil just round here, about just where the cap breaks away from the stem, and that's typical of this species of fungi. You can just see a sort of a skirt round the stipe, and quite a thick base as well, where it grew from the soil.
It doesn't have roots to speak of, but
No,
very
it
thin,
doesn't.
obviously.
No, that's the whole thing with fungi. They're technically called non-flowering plants, is the best way to describe them. They don't ever have flowers. Rat, would you not go across onto the road? Good boy. He's come to visit us. So that's the important thing to remember. So it just attaches itself to the ground with the mycelium, which are invisible to us, but usually it has a swollen base, as many of the fungi do, and it kind of stands there by its own gravity. So, you know, in a wind they generally blow over, and this one will produce spores from the gills underneath, and you can see the gills are really tightly packed, and so the spores are literally microscopic, and they'll go off, they'll drop out either onto the ground close to where the fungi is, or they'll blow off in the wind once this starts to dry underneath.
It's a thing of beauty, isn't it? But not one that should be taken lightly.
No, it used to be gathered up in the northern hemisphere. It likes birch forests and acid soil, which you'll have in the northern part. You'll go up into Siberia, right at the end of the tree line where the forests finish and the scrub layer begins, and you have that really cold winter weather. And then the nomadic tribes up in there used to gather it and dry it and then actually eat it over the winter months, and it can cause extreme stomach upsets, but it also causes hallucinations as well. And so it's quite a dangerous drug, and most of that practice of eating it, it's a tribe called the Cognacs who live up there. That kind of particular practice of eating these hallucinogenic fly agarics has ceased, and they've changed over to vodka drinking now.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. So there we are, but it's typical of birch woodland. I'm kneeling down on the ground, and all around us there's an array of different species of trees all laying on the ground around us.
I think I can see some more red over there, so those
right,
are probably
yes.
more fly agaric.
Yes, yeah, there's a really good spot for them here. So it's quite prolific, but they really have this season sort of early October to mid-October. Once you get the hard frosts, fungi have such a high moisture content in them. 70-80% plus of the fungi body is moisture, which makes them grow so quickly. So that's then they just deteriorate when you have the first frost. So their season is quite short and abrupt, as it is for many of the species. So this is a really lovely habitat because the trees aren't cleared. There's a crisscross, a mishmash of fallen trees, many of which are birch trees, some ash trees. This is typical of ash dieback here. This one's just come over in the last day or two. And you can see what happens, Matthew, why, although when you have a tree with ash dieback, it's quite a young tree. It's about 40 feet tall, about 12 inches through the trunk at the extreme base, and the roots, there's still some green leaf on it at the top, look. No reason why it should come over, but as I've said before, I've had to learn about chalara, or ash dieback, that it also affects the roots completely. One's fallen that way, and just look at the root system here. I can actually put my finger up the root. That's that rotten. It's just gone like paper mache, wet form of it, and it's fallen away from the road.
So it's got no base whatsoever.
No, it just stood there vertically, nothing to hold it.
First little breeze that comes along, over it goes.
Yeah, and it'll be true of many of the ash trees in here. After all, it's a very fond tree for me, being high ash farm, and not many of them are going to be standing in a year or two's time. It's just literally standing on its own by gravity, because it was pretty well vertical, and it's just peeled over and there's no root ball on it. And that's typical all over the woodland here. Even some of the large trees are exactly the same. Oh yes, I can see what you mean. There's two further fly agarics just a little bit further in. One quite large one, and one a little bit bigger than the one we've just seen. Yeah, well spotted. Yes. So,
well, you're going to go solo now, aren't you, Chris?
yes, I will. I've got some more jobs to do at the farm. We're digging out and putting in some new pipes for a really large bridgeway and a new sort of bit of public access for safety. And so I've got to do and help Daniel and Neil for an hour or two, and then I'll just finish off this podcast because there's some birds I particularly wanted to introduce you to. I'll keep it secret until a bit later in the afternoon, and then I'll do that solo. Rat will still be with me. But before
He never leaves your side, does he?
No, he doesn't. No, he's stuck to me like glue. Yes. But if you'd like to help with the sort of funding of the podcast, any donations will be really, really welcome, and your questions as well. There'll probably be one or two questions later on this afternoon because I'm not at the office and I don't know how to use the printer to get them out of the computer unless I have a hammer. So,
That's why you got a son.
yes, that's why I've got a son. He's very adept at that.
So any questions, email chris@highashfarm.com, or if you can help with the running costs of this weekly feature, this podcast, then it's highashfarm.com/podcast. You can find out about how to make that donation. Chris, I'm going to head off,
Yep.
but good luck later.
Yes, I hope so. Fingers crossed we can find what we're looking for. I've been waiting over an hour for these birds to appear, and they've been rather stubborn, but it's almost evening. It's just after 5 o'clock. We've got about an hour's daylight left here in Norfolk, and one particular bird species has been doing really well at the farm here, bucking the trend of decline for this particular species, and it's the missel thrush. And it's here all year round. It's our largest resident thrush here in the UK. About 10.5 inches from tip of beak to tip of tail, and a song thrush, quite a bit smaller, about 9 inches from tip of beak to tip of tail. They're both similar in appearance, but the habitat I'm in, and I'm standing almost in the centre of Caister Park, which is about 35 acres of rolling pasture land, horses grazing on it in the lower part of the pasture at the moment. And there's 6 areas of trees dotted out all over the pasture, sort of real old parkland. And almost in the middle of this giant area of land is a quarry, and round the edge of that is it's a Roman quarry, because standing just on the east side of Venta Icenorum, that's the Roman capital of eastern Britain, right beside High Ash Farm. On the edge of the quarry, which we think was dug for stone for the Roman walls, the fortification that surrounded the town, the quarry remains, and it's got sort of quite steep sides, and there's hawthorn all the way round it, and that's ideal food for the missel thrush. Turdus vociferus, the scientific name, whereas the song thrush is Turdus philomelius, so quite a bit smaller. The song thrush is the one that's the best songster, a really high-pitched, very accomplished, and almost as though it's polishing its song. And they will start singing from now, from mid-October right through until May or June, whereas the missel thrush will probably start singing early in the new year. It's also called the stormcock because it will go to the top of trees, and which is its favourite habitat, and sing from there. And often people used to associate its song, which is bit more of a jangly affair. It's not as well accomplished. It's still high pitched and very fluty, but it's not as accomplished as a song thrusher's song. And they sing out, and particularly even in windy weather, because they're early nesters, about 4 weeks earlier than a song thrush, which are also quite early, but often missel thrushes built their nests at the end of February, so it can still be quite cold. The nest is made of grass and various twigs, just very small twigs, usually in the fork of a tree, quite high up, quite out on the branches. It's always quite surprising. It's sometimes a little bit of mud is added, but it's not as accomplished as a song thrusher's nest, which has a very smooth lining. Eggs for a song thrush are sky blue with little brownish black dots on them. Missel thrushers' eggs a little bit larger, usually about 5 in a clutch at the most. Just occasionally 4 is quite a good average for them. The female will often be incubating those at the end of February, early March. And funny enough, although they're early nesters, they don't suffer the same predation that many of the other bird species suffer from. Things like magpies, carrion crows, even squirrels will raid the nest. But because it's early on in the year, the magpies and jays, both of which are notorious egg thieves, don't steal the eggs. because they haven't got their young to feed, and so they tend to sort of gloss past them somehow or other. But it's lovely to have them there because they have quite a sharp increase in the 1970s, and then it kind of tailed off, and over the last 20 or so years the numbers have just been declining. We don't know all the reasons. Song thrushes, you know, are much more sort of in suburban areas, and you'll find them in your garden. Much less likely that you'll see missel thrush, which is what we've got here. They're on the far side of the field at the moment. I can see them feeding out there. I thought initially there was just 2 adults, but there's a group of about 5 or 6 of them, which is probably a family group. And at this time of the year, mid-October onwards, they'll form small flocks, perhaps 20, 30 birds, and they can be anywhere on High Ash Farm. And that's what I've been doing in the last hour, searching around, trying to find where they're actually doing their late evening feed. The sun's just come out, it's just still above the horizon, so it's streaming across the field, and got the binoculars with me. If I pop those up and focus them in, I can see them now quite clearly. They're about 250 yards from me. If I go out and walk out towards them, they're more unforgiving of human company than song thrushes are, so they're likely to fly off up into the trees. But it's lovely to see them because the sun's just catching them now, and they're quite standing sort of almost more upright than a song thrush, and you can see the speckled breast, black speckles quite liberally all over the breast, and a sort of olivey brownish beige on the back, whereas a song thrush is much lighter brown on the back. And under the wing coverts as a song thrush, you almost think you're looking at a redwing, because underneath the wings, when they're flying over the top of you, the song thrush almost looks orange on the under coverts of the wings, and the missel thrush, when that flies over you, it's almost pure white underneath, much paler. This habitat really suits a missel thrush really, really well. These clumps of trees, all the adequate food. The song thrush, as you know, feeds much more on garden snails and beetles and things like that in your garden. Sort of bound along on your lawn, put the head on one side, not listening, but using monocular vision, and then pouncing down, grabbing a worm. And missel thrush will do the same feeding characteristic, small invertebrates in the soil. Worms are a particular favourite as well, which is why the pasture is really, really good for them out here. And that's why they're being quite successful. So bucking the trends. Sparrowhawks will catch them, as they do song thrush as well, so they'll come and make a meal out of those. Some predation, because song thrushes, early nesters, will often go for 2 broods. Song thrush in particular, sometimes even 3 broods, whereas the missel thrush, usually about 2 broods, fed by both male and female in the nest. That's a missel thrush. Female does all the nest building, and the male might help feeding the youngsters. Incubation, just over the fortnight, about 17 days for hatching, slightly less in the song thrush, to give you an idea of the relative incubation times, and fledgling about 20 days or so, depending on the weather. Those early broods can be in the nest longer, as the parents take longer to feed them, and the cooler conditions mean the chicks don't develop quite as quickly. Really interesting, because there's a football club, West Bromwich Albion, and they're also called the Baggies, but they've also got another name which is still on their supporters' badges, and it's a thrush. And on the old scoreboard, before they changed it and modernised the ground, there was a giant thrush on top, and they're called the thrushes, which is a name for a good singer, and that's what thrushes are. And so West Bromwich Albion supporters called the thrushes. I love it, and that's still their name today. But missel thrush are really, really welcome here. But they've got another kind of trick song thrushes don't have. At this time of the year, they'll take over a tree. It can be a holly tree with lots of berries on it, a yew tree, and although I mentioned that high-pitched singing, they have another call which is really raucous sound. The best way to describe it is like a footballer's rattle. You know, those old wooden rattles that used to whir round and they go like that. And if any creature like a cat in the garden, they're nesting, they will nest in parkland, they'll nest in old gardens where there's lots of mature trees as well. So if any predator comes too close, it can even be a magpie or a carrion crow, then they will make this noise and they will dive bomb any intruders. So I have this other name for them. The scientific name, as I said, is Turdus vociferus, and I call them Turdus vociferus because they're so kind of aggressive and noisy compared to the much more demure song thrush. Anyway, I'm watching them and just feeding, and the way they're going around, they're just bounding along the top of the ground and just looking, all feeding together quite close. I suppose they're about 20 feet apart, and so they're all in a little bit of a group, and that's how they feed. And that's also, you know, if they sense danger, because they're right out in the open, they're at least 150 yards from any tree or any hedge where they are at the moment, and that's really lovely to see. But the sun's just catching them. It's absolutely perfect to see. Just looking round again with the binoculars, see if there's any others. As I said, they tend to group together in family units at this time of the year. Missel thrush at High Ash Farm, a little speciality here, bucking the trend, and they're doing really well. Here we are, back at the truck. Close the door. Rat's been really good. Been asleep on the front seat, and it's all nice and warm for me. Good boy. There he is on my lap. Right, we have a letter here to read out. It's from June Foster from Effingham Junction in Surrey. Hi Chris, Matthew and Rat. Last autumn, my neighbour's terrace garden, right next to the railway line here, was covered in cotoneaster with bright red berries. It attracted blackbirds, redwings, fieldfares and thrushes. I only have a small garden close to the railway line. Is there anything I can plant to attract these birds? My house wall faces north and the garden is very small. Right, that's a bit of a dilemma, but north-facing wall doesn't sort of lend itself particularly easy, but there is one species that would perhaps thrive there, even on the north-facing wall. It's pyracantha, or also called firethorn. It's available from most garden centres, but there are a number of firethorn species. But there's one particular one which I have planted at the farm, and at the moment, mid-October, it's absolutely plastered in bright orange berries, and it's already being feasted on by blackbirds in my garden, and also wood pigeons have started to eat the berries, and quite soon, once we have the cold weather arrive, fieldfares and redwings will come right into the farmyard if the weather's cold enough and also feast on it. So pyracantha, and the species I would recommend is called orange glow. There's another one very close to it called orange charmer, so don't get too confused by them. So orange glow is the good one. It is fairly compact, it can be clipped, it prefers just to be tied in for the first year or two. So if you've got a bit of trellis on the wall, you can buy them. They're sort of 18 to 24 inches tall is a good height. Plant it in good compost just to give it a start, and maybe give it some water next June, July time, in the hot time of the year. Once it's established, you don't need to do that anymore. It's quite hardy, and on the north facing wall it doesn't suffer from the sun quite as much. But it's good all the year round for various reasons, because it's evergreen. It will lose some of its leaves in the harshest cold weather where the frosts are, but generally evergreen. It's thorny, hence pyracantha, so it's quite good keeping cats out of it, climbing up it. if you've got cats in the neighbourhood. And the other thing is, it's excellent for birds to nest in. So if you keep it clipped fairly well back, don't take too much off the growth in the first year or two, just train the leaders back before the thorns arrive and get it in behind the trellis work. That will work like magic. Then it also comes into flower, so you'll have those rich blooms, sort of creamy white, flat top blooms that the berries come on later. It's really good for bees as well. They'll come and pollinate it in the spring and early summer. And once they're set, the berries then form over the summer month, start off as match head size, tiny little green berries. And this time of the year, they're best, and they've got the seed inside, which the birds can carry off. It doesn't kind of establish itself very well in the wild, so it's best to buy them from a garden centre rather than try and grow your own. So that's about it, really. So north facing, it would suit that. On my bungalow wall, it also faces north, and it's bright orange at the moment, which contrasts beautifully with the brickwork. So it's also attractive, good for birds to nest in, as I said, and a bit of a deterrent for cats and other birds like magpies. That works quite well in that respect, because often there's humans about a lot of the time, but when the weather gets cold, the birds come and eat the berries and sort of lose some of their fear at this time of the year, particularly in the hungry gap. So that's my recommendation, pyracantha orange glow. And thank you very much for the letter there. So thank you, June Foster from Effingham Junction in Surrey. Right, see you soon. Next week we'll be doing the same again, but a little bit different each week. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.